The ear consists from three main parts. First, the external ear. External ear consists from the auricle or the pinna. Next, the external auditory canal or external acoustic canal, and the tympanic membrane or eardrum. The middle ear, next part of the ear, is the middle ear, or another name is the tympanic cavity, to contain the ear ossicle, ear ossicles, or the bones of the middle ear. The middle ear is continuous with the nasopharynx through Eustachian tube. The last part is the inner ear. The inner ear consists from cochlea, the vestibule, and the semicircular canal, the three semicircular canals. So these are the parts of the ear. We have the external ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. The first part of the external ear is the auricle or the pinna. هو صيوان الأذن. It is made of elastic cartilage, except the lower part of it, which is devoid of cartilage, is called the lobule, ear lobule. The auricle have an outer curved cartilage that is called helix. Immediately inner to the helix and parallel to the helix is another cartilage that is called curved cartilage called antihelix. Antihelix, it will divide into two crusts, superior crust and inferior crust. At the middle of the auricle there is a depression called concha. Concha, it will lead into the external acoustic meatus. Immediately anterior to the external acoustic meatus there is an elevation of cartilage that is called the tragus. Opposite to the tragus, another elevation of cartilage is called antitragus. In between these two elevations of cartilage, this notch is called intertragic notch. So these are the parts of the auricle. The auricle will lead into the auditory canal or the external acoustic canal. The outer part of the auditory canal is cartilaginous, while the more inner part is formed of bone. It will end with the tympanic membrane. So these are the parts of the external ear: the pinna, the auditory canal, and the tympanic membrane. The middle ear or tympanic cavity contains the auditory ossicles. These auditory ossicles consist from the malleus or the hammer, the incus or the anvil, and the stapes. The middle ear, it is continuous with the nasopharynx through the pharyngotympanic tube or the Eustachian tube. The last part of the ear is the inner ear. As we said, it consists from the cochlea, vestibule, and the semicircular canal. It has two openings, that is called the oval opening and the round opening. Oval, or it's called oval window and round window. The oval window, it will fit the foot plate of stapes. So these are the part of the middle ear and the inner ear. The middle ear bone or the ossicles, this is the malleus, incus, and stapes. They articulate with each other by synovial joint, and we can see that the foot plate of the stapes, it fit into the oval window of the inner ear. This is the inner ear, this is the cochlea, This is the vestibule, and these are the three semicircular canals. These are the bones of the middle ear, the malleus or the hammer. It have a handle and it have head and neck. The handle, this is the handle of the malleus, it will be attached to the tympanic membrane. Next, the incus have short process and it have a long process. The long process will articulate with the stapes, and the stapes have head and it have anterior and posterior cross, and it have a foot plate. Foot plate will fit into the oval window of the inner ear. So these are the bones of the middle ear, or ossicles, malleus, incus, and stapes. العربي راح تكون المطرقة والسندان والركاب. This is the inner ear, which is a bony part. This is the cochlea, القوقعة. And this is the vestibule. And these are the semicircular canals, القنوات شبه الهلالية. This is the oval window and this is the round window. The vestibulocochlear nerve will originate from the inner ear parts. يعني راح يكون عندنا vestibular nerve from the vestibular sense organ in the semicircular canals, and the cochlear nerve is originate from the cochlea for hearing. The nerve will pass through the internal acoustic meatus and it will attach or end in the pons, in the groove in between the pons and medulla oblongata. Nasal cavity and nasopharynx. Nasal cavity have roof, floor, lateral wall, and medial wall. Here in this figure, we can see the roof of the nasal cavity that consists from the nasal bone and frontal bone and the cribriform plate of ethmoid and the body of the sphenoid. This is the roof. The floor of the nasal cavity is made of hard pellet. The lateral wall have these features, these bony projections, that's called concha, the superior concha, the middle concha, and the inferior concha. The anterior opening of the nasal cavity is called the nostrils, and the posterior opening is called the choana that lead into the nasopharynx. Nasopharynx, here we can see that the nasopharynx is bounded superiorly by the body of the sphenoid and inferiorly by the soft palate. Posteriorly, we have the first cervical vertebra. On the lateral wall of the nasopharynx, we have this opening, which is the opening of the pharyngotympanic or the auditor tube or the opening of the Eustachian tube. Also, in the roof of the nasopharynx, we have the collection of lymphoid tissue that is called adenoid. Immediately superior to the superior concha, there is a recess that is called sphenoethmoidal recess. Sphenoethmoidal recess. The body of the sphenoid contains this cavity that is called the sphenoid air sinus. Also, the frontal bone also contains this cavity that is called the frontal sinus. The pharynx, as we said, it is a funnel-shaped muscular tube that extends from the base of the skull down to the cricoid cartilage, to the level of the cricoid cartilage. It consists from three parts: the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. Nasopharynx that lies behind the nasal cavity, oropharynx that lies behind the oral cavity, and laryngopharynx that lies or related to the laryngeal inlet. يعني راح يكون ال extension nasopharynx from the base of the skull down to the soft palate. Oropharynx from the soft palate down to the upper border of the epiglottis, and the laryngopharynx from the upper border of epiglottis down to the level of the cricoid cartilage. The oral cavity, this is the oral cavity proper, and this is the vestibule. Oral cavity proper, it have a roof and it have floor. The roof consists from the hard palate and the soft palate. Hard palate and the soft palate, and the soft palate is attached to the posterior border of the hard palate. The posterior end of the soft palate show a midline cone-shaped projection called uvula. The floor of the oral cavity is formed by the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. The lateral wall of the oropharynx contain the palatine tonsils. These are the palatine tonsils. It is situated in the palatine fossa. It is bounded anteriorly by the palatoglossal arch and posteriorly by the palatopharyngeal arch. Palatoglossal arch because it passes from the palate to the tongue, and palatopharyngeal arch, it will pass from the palate to the wall of the pharynx. This is the oropharynx extending in between the soft palate and the upper border of the epiglottis. The palatoglossal arch is the boundary in between the oral cavity and the oropharynx.